and welcome to Ignite 2022, an industry-focused professional panel series. My name is Katie Martucci. I use she, her pronouns. I'm Assistant Director for Career Education in the Center for Student Professional Development at DelVal University, and I will be your friendly Ignite facilitator. So today's panel features professionals from the human resources, people operations industry. And as a reminder, if you enjoy today's conversation, you can email cspd@delval.edu to connect with any of our panelists here. And you can also check out additional Ignite recordings on the CSPD SharePoint site, which will be linked in the video notes. So without further delay, we can dive in. And I'd like to invite our panelists to please introduce themselves.
Well, my name is Paul Waters. I am with Wesley Enhanced Living. I am what they would consider a nursing talent acquisition with them.
I guess I'm up next. My name is Scott Drinnan. I'm the HR manager with Merck, Sharp, and Dohme Federal Credit Union. We're based right down the street from DelVal in lovely Chalfont.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Stump. I'm the Director of Mission Engagement at YWCA Tri-County area. I help oversee human resources for our YW that serves Berks, Chester, and Montgomery County.
Thank you, everybody. So our first question for today is how and or when did you learn about your current career choice and your industry?
Well, for me, it started out actually on accident. I was approached after doing video editing for a school for a while by somebody who wanted me to kind of start to learn the path. And they took me under their wing, started showing me the ropes on the kind of sourcing and recruiting end of things, and said that they wanted me to become part of their agency and start to work with them.
Fantastic. Well, I actually started out in a different field. I started out in a field called in the information technology field, but back then it was known as data processing. And back then, HR was known as personnel. So the industries have evolved, the industries have changed. I was always fascinated with personnel / human resources. And about midway through my career, I made the decision to transition. So, you know, my IT colleagues said I went to the dark side, and my HR colleagues said I finally saw the light. So I'll let you guys be the judge of that.
God, I think we found the light. I'm going to go on that side of the spectrum. I'm more recently in the human resources field and absolutely did not start in this field. I started in marketing and communications, and then shortly out of college, moving through a couple early positions in the beginning of my career led me to the YW, where we have really started transitioning human resources and human relations from a separate entity or separate department and connected it directly in with our mission, which is how all of our programs and services really operate to serve our community. We felt it inherently important to bring that internally for our employees and staff as well. And so I think I've had a little bit of experience in a variety of the administrative fields, but have found most enjoyment working with the people that are here serving our community and moving our mission forward.
That's great. Thank you, everybody. So if you can talk a little bit, how has your career stayed the same or changed from what you imagined it would be when you first started out? And you can go back as far as you'd like, take that in whatever direction you'd like to.
Well, for me, it's kind of wound through different areas, but ultimately, I'd say most of it comes back to, again, the video editing end of things. I spent my high school career in a news and video editing high school's version of it, and loved it. And I always thought that was going to be the way I would go. Well, then down the road, I started seeing my enjoyment in getting to do the HR, the recruiting, the sourcing end of things, and it really all of a sudden opened up a brand new pathway for me that I loved.
Fantastic. Well, I guess it's a common theme here you're hearing is that many of us have transitioned from a different field, different tactics. So just a further background, what led me to choose IT, I was a mathematics major in college. And the dilemma every mathematics major faces is, well, what are you going to do next, right? So you can either go on to graduate school, you can link it with the science, find something that you could actually apply it to. So I chose computer science as a minor, and that was my entree into the IT field, which I loved. It was a great field to be in. A lot of parallels, by the way, which we can get into later. And something which, ultimately, when I started to, want to get more involved in the organizational change and the people side of the business, I did, a bridge career, if you will, in management consulting. And it was really involved where I got involved in organizational change management, things like that, and ultimately led me into HR. So really a progression. And some people think, well, how did you get to HR from math? Well, it's not an easy explanation, but that's my story and I'm sticking with it.
So I also did not start out in the human resources, people operations field, but made my way to here, I think really connected to what I enjoy most, and that is working and communicating with people, whether that be from a front end, as I originally started in marketing, it was a lot of the face or the story of the organization or the programs or services, whereas I really built up my skill in being able to share that and recruit and bring on more partnerships and more individuals. Whereas I also wanted to make sure that the excitement that I felt sharing our organization's story was felt for other employees who didn't have my job about sharing that story on an everyday basis. And so for me, it really, the transition started when I found the YW and was chosen as their communications person. When I had first started here, after a couple years, I realized, again, I think it's really important that we're investing in our people just as much as our people are investing in our community. And so with that, we were able to reimagine, and what Scott was speaking to around change management and organization, I was able to participate in restructuring and reimagining what really pulling human resources out of what is typically partnered with finance and payroll into its own department to focus on, again, our human resources. Our humans are our greatest capital. And if we don't have our humans, then we don't have our programs or services. And that really has kept the fire ignited in me to continue in this field. And I think starting off, I really had no idea what I wanted to do when I went into college. And I think a lot of individuals and a lot of young students are like that coming out of high school into college. And people operations is not always the top on people's list when they're thinking about majors or really focusing on where they want their career to head. And I hope that out of anything that's discussed today, this is understood that you can move into this field, even though we haven't quite started there.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think it's important to note at this time, as of the recording date here of our Ignite panel, at DelVal, we don't have a designated human resources major, but that does not prevent students from exploring this as a career option and understanding that whatever they are studying, that there might be opportunities to translate it if there's passion and there's interest, and they take the right kind of opportunities as they come up. So I appreciate everybody sharing that, kind of all coming from different directions. So our next question is, can you share an example of a professional obstacle that you faced as an HR professional, and how you got to the other side of it, how you overcame that?
I mean, I think one of the biggest things that you see is just in general perception. People perceive the department as a whole normally in some cases as the bad guy because they might see you as the person not just that brings them in, but also would be the first ones to see them out the door. So you have to I think the biggest obstacle is you have to fight that perception and show them and demonstrate to them that you are here to, in more cases than not, help them. You are trying to make sure that that they get the enjoyment out of everything they are doing. You want to make sure that they have the proper resources to their disposal and everything. So I think that is the biggest example I can always give, is just perception of people in this industry.
Yeah, that's a great example, Paul. I think there's many obstacles we all face, and the longer we're in the business, the more we face obstacles, right? One I think that I'll share, which was at the time when I was making the bridge from management consulting into HR, and the biggest obstacle was my own self-belief, right? How can I convince somebody, this math major who was in the field of IT and management consulting, can actually do this HR stuff, right? So one of the things which I did was I went through a certification program that was sponsored through SHRM. I went through that process for myself to see where did I maybe have gaps in my knowledge. And then I could, of course, learn those things and focus on those things. And the truth is, you really need to be a continuous learner in any profession, and certainly HR, it's no different, right? So I think that was a path that, or that was a bridge that helped me not only gain confidence, but realize you're never going to learn everything, but you want to be exposed and have that attitude of wanting to be a continuous learner.
I love that you mentioned that. I'm sorry, Sarah. I just want to hone in on that for students, that even after you achieve that accomplishment of getting that degree, which of course is so important and valuable, the learning doesn't stop. It doesn't matter your profession or, how many years you've had in your present profession. Scott, as you referenced, the industry changes and you have to change along with it. And it kind of just happens. But yeah, to be able to seek out some self-learning opportunities. You referenced SHRM as a professional association. I think that's great for students to look up and learn more about. So thank you. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
No problem. That was also what I was going to speak to as well, is one of the biggest challenges, and I have to imagine this was not just a challenge for the human resource field, was moving through the COVID pandemic. That was a landscape that not a single one of us here could have foreseen by any means. And I think specifically in human resources, that was here at the YW, it was our opportunity to pause and reflect on how we're serving and keeping our people whole. When we were shut down for 4 months for that pandemic in 2020, and what is still continuing to be a pandemic, there was so much changing in the landscape of keeping our people whole, keeping the communication lines open, making sure we had technology accessible for each and every one of our employees and all of the variety of departments they serve in, to make sure we were still connecting as an organization. Because although we may not have been actively from a recruitment standpoint, having a heavy lift for us in our mission engagement field, we were absolutely having a big lift in making sure that our employees were managing through that. As many of our employees had kids at home, had a variety of other experiences that they were not used to, having to continue to work in a new environment, in a new, really a new landscape for across the board. How we operate really had to change, and we had to reimagine what that could look like to help our employees succeed, to help our organization succeed. And I think learning, like Scott had mentioned, utilizing some of those core resources like SHRM, and for us, the PANO, which is the Pennsylvania Association of Nonprofit Organizations, was another really great resource in those times throughout the past couple of years, to really make sure that we were upholding our due diligence behind all of our policies and practices, while also updating and managing what was an incredibly changing landscape for what was such a short amount of time looking back now.
Yeah, thank you. So hard to ignore the COVID-19 pandemic when we have these panel discussions now, because it almost always comes up, and makes sense as to why when we're thinking about challenges. So our next question is, if you can provide a pearl of wisdom here for our students and share your best advice for those who are curious about HR or interested to pursue a career in HR after they leave DelVal.
My biggest pearl of wisdom is just to always stay open and never see yourself in a light that that you have to have a complete and utter order over everything that's going to happen in a day. Because one thing you will learn in this field is you are never going to have complete control over your day. It will be, anything can happen, anything can change. You can start a day thinking that your schedule is going to look like something for 8 hours, and before you know it, you might not get any of the things that you expected accomplished in those 8 hours, because there could be 8 other things that pop up. So that would be my best pearl of wisdom, is make sure you are versatile and you don't come into things thinking you are going to control everything in your day.
And that's excellent, Paul. And I would just add to that. I think, a couple of things I know that help me and really helps no matter what field you're choosing is get experience in that field, have an internship, excuse me. And I know DelVal is great with their experiential learning program, which provides opportunity. The other thing you can do is you can talk with professionals. You have 3 professionals here, right, that you can network with, and there's a host of others that you could connect with. And I think just by talking with folks that do different things in HR, there's generalists. I'm a generalist. I kind of do everything, right? There's specialty areas: recruiting, compensation, training, organizational development, what have you. There's a world of things: consulting, in-house. There's so many opportunities that I think until you explore it for yourself and see what's the right fit for you, I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Scott, I wish I came before you because I feel like you're reading my mind with so much of what I'd like to say. I want to expand on that though and say, find a mentor. I think if you can find somebody that is willing to invest in you as you are willing to invest in learning their knowledge and sharing some of their experiences as well as your own, really is going to take you pretty far. And no matter what career path you're taking, finding an individual who you can connect with and really bounce some of your career aspirations, whether you have those outlined or not, having that conversation with a mentor can be really beautifully enhancing to really expand your mind for what is your possibilities. Because again, just because you're going to school and getting a degree in this, that, or the other thing, that doesn't mean that that's where you have to stay. We're all a great example of that. However, finding and making those connections long-term, networking with a variety of individuals and understanding and hopefully finding who might be the best fit for a mentor for you early on in your career can really serve as a benefit long-term if you're able to maintain those relationships as well.
Thank you. Yeah, such great advice. And I can put a little plug into our students. If they're interested to connect with other Aggies and they're interested to get on LinkedIn, which I highly recommend, we have a group for our students and alumni in the DelVal community. It's a great place to start building connections, maybe outside of the folks you immediately know, but also just thinking about who your faculty are and the staff on campus and even your peers, because you don't know what they're going to go on to do as well. And even if someone's maybe a year ahead of you, we're, graduating a semester ahead of you, you're not quite sure right where they're going to land, and they could be a really valuable connection. So I think we have time for at least one more question. And again, you can kind of take this in whatever direction you want. But thinking about your day-to-day and where you are in your career right now, what are some specific skills or talents that you kind of have to work at to keep sharp, to really do your job well and be successful?
Honestly, I think one of the biggest skills you should always work on, keep sharp, is just your general people skills, your general conversation skills, especially now in the way things are with people where it is so easy to interact over text messages, interact over message, any kind of messaging system, Facebook, Twitter, stuff like that. You don't realize until you actually get into face-to-face conversations how necessary it is in the course of the day of work. If you cannot pick up a phone and properly have a conversation, you will not be able to effectively screen somebody, because you can't tell those changes in tone. You cannot tell the different cues that you might have to pick up on as you're talking to somebody to say, like, hey, something, they might not be the right fit for this, or they might have this. You need to be able to have those skills to really effectively thrive in this environment.
I think that that's good. I just want to jump in and real quickly, this is another plug for DelVal, but so there's all kinds of on-campus opportunities for students to take employment while they're studying, and it's, you know, right there on campus, which helps in terms of transportation. So a lot of those interpersonal skills that you're referencing, those can be gained through something like an on-campus office position, where you're maybe getting to answer phone calls or greet folks who come by the office with a question. So just something to consider.
I tried to boil it down to three things that I would categorize. And I mentioned one earlier, continuous learning. I think that's really important because the field is always changing. You know, throw in the pandemic, and it wasn't in any of our playbooks. I kept looking everywhere. Where do we have this documented? We didn't. So continuous learning, adaptability, and this is something Paul was referring to earlier. You come in with your day, you have your to-do list. You may not get to the first thing on your to-do list until it's tomorrow, right? So it's being adaptable to what situations are presented to you. And then thirdly, which I think is important in all roles, but it's especially important in human resources and people operations, is listening. And I think listening is an extremely important leadership skill. And one of the most important things that we can do for our employees and our organizations is listen. And to the extent that we can, you know, understand, you know, Stephen Covey said, seek first to understand. That was one of the first of the 7 habits of highly successful people, right? It's listening so that you can really understand where somebody's coming from. And if you do that and you continuously learn and you're flexible, it'll be a piece of cake.
I love those points. Listening and being willing to learn and adapt. I think it's incredibly important to be self-reflective as well in how that you are managing and listening and supporting the staff that you're working with, whether it's from a recruitment perspective or a retention perspective. I think it's incredibly important that you're reflective in how you're communicating, reflective in how you're enforcing and operationalizing some of what needs to get done for what can be a very general department in human resources. And I think that self-reflection can really help build your confidence, like Scott was speaking to toward the beginning, your confidence in what you're doing and how you are supporting the organization as a whole. Because I think human resources is one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable component of how companies and organizations are upheld. Again, our humans are the reason that we're able to exist. And I think being able to adapt and self-reflect and improve moving forward, every single one of our days is a learning opportunity, whether it was a reflection on, yes, we did this great, this could also be an area for improvement in the future. I think it's important to take that moment to pause and take that time for reflection for yourself.
Thank you so much. Such great insight. I think we'll leave it at that for today, but I want to thank you again for your time and your contribution to our students in their career exploration. And I just, again, want to remind students that these folks here are more than willing to chat with you. If you'd like to reach out, you can get in touch with them through my office, Center for Student Professional Development. And I also want to point out that each of their organizations has at one time or another, or will, posted with us at DelVal looking for student and graduate talent. And so keep that in mind as well. So again, thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.